What is up, guys? My name is Alano, and welcome to the 4th episode at my attempt at recreating Super Mario Bros. In Game Maker Studio. Now, as always, before we go ahead and add some new stuff to our game, we're gonna go back and try to fix some of the things we already have to make them even better. Starting off with folders in the resource tree. Now, the further we delve into programming our game, the more and more sprites and objects we're gonna have, and we want to keep this all tidy up. So let's go ahead and do that, okay? We're gonna add in some groups. For the sprites, say Mario. So that's going to be, we're gonna add in all the sprites for Mario inside of this one. So idle, I want walk, go ahead. Alright, we're also going to want to add in a group for our debug. So in here we'll put every sprite that are associated with our debug in the game. Like so. So that's it for the sprites. For the objects, we want a group for our controllers. Here we're going to put inside our controller main, our inputs, and some other stuff later on. We also want a group for our player, in this case Mario. And go inside, okay. And we want a group for our debug. There we go. And like I said, we're going to add in some stuff in there the more and more we advance. Next up, there's a slight bug I'd like to fix that's located into the step event of our object player in the idle state. So let me just start off the game so I can show you guys. And it's actually pretty simple to fix, but I still want to show you. So whenever I say jump and then move a bit, you see here I'm at the idle state, but I keep on moving. And that's because if I'm moving and then I change state, well, in the idle state, if you check here, there's no code that tells the player to actually stop moving. So we're gonna add this right now. So we'll go ahead into the player movement state and see here the lerp function. Just go ahead and copy this and paste it right here. And that's all there is to it. Let me tab this in, make it prettier. Okay. So let's just go ahead and test it real quick to see if this works. Now, since we added the lerp function here, if the player speed is greater than 0 while in the idle state, it's going to slowly decrease. The same way it decreases when you just stop pressing buttons. So let's go ahead, and there you go. Now that this is fixed, let's move along to the other phase. There's some stuff I'd like to change into the jumping state. Well, I say something I'd like to change, but we're actually going to do a complete overhaul of the system. So if you go into the create event, you'll see there's the jump time variable. We're actually not going to need it anymore. And jump speed, we're going to set it to 6.5. Since we're changing some stuff here, this is the new jump speed we're going to use. Moving along, if you go ahead here, we actually don't need all of this code. So we'll just get rid of this. And before we do something else, everywhere we check for inputs. Okay, so into the idle state, right state, or left state, when we check for input A and we change the state to jumping, we're actually going to want to change this to input A, and our VSP is equal to 0 actually. So we want to check if we're pressing A and if we are not jumping. We want to change the state to jumping init. So yep, as you might have guessed, we're going to add the jumping init state. So let's go ahead and do that. Just before the case jumping, we're going to add in a case, and we're going to call it jumping init. There we go. Like so. Don't forget the break. All right. So inside of here, we are going to, well, yeah, don't forget to change all of the inputs. So in the idle state, we also want it into the right state. We also want it into the left state. There we go. So when we press the A button and our speed is equal to 0, we change to the jumping init state, which is going to initialize the jumping state. And after that, we're going to go straight into the jumping state and, well, make the player jump. It might seem quite complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. So bear with me. Into the jumping init, we're going to move the sprite index and image speed right here. Okay, so just like so. After that, we want to make the player jump. So VSP is going to be equal to minus jump speed. Like so. And we want to change state. So our state is going to be equal to jumping. And that's all there is to, that's all we need to do into the jumping init state. Let me make sure if all this is right. I was going pretty fast there. All right, now into the jumping state. Here, as you can see, when we press A, we start the jumping init and then we jump by modifying the VSP function. Here, we want to actually check if we are still pressing the jump button, and if we are, we go higher, and if we're not, we go actually not higher. And we're going to do this like so. Right under allow player movement, because we still want to allow the player movement while we are jumping, we're gonna say if VSP is smaller than 0 and we are not pressing, well, okay, and if not, input dot a held. This is a new input we're going to add into the input object. Well, let me just write the code here first. Okay, so if VSP is smaller than 0, meaning that we are jumping, and we are not pressing, we're not keeping the A held button, then our VSP is going to be equal to max VSP, and it's going to choose between the max function actually chooses between the max value between all the values you put in. So it's going to check for the max between the actual VSP we have and minus jump speed divided by 2. All right, and all that does is that when we're not holding the jump button, then it's going to set our VSP to either VSP or minus jump speed divided by 2. And effectively stopping our jumping action midair. So let's go ahead and add the input A held. So into our input object. Where are you? There you are. Check for inputs. So we have A here, that's keyboard check. So let's go ahead and copy this. And we're gonna call it A_held. And instead of only keyboard check, we're gonna go ahead and actually we're gonna change this one here. We're gonna change the A to keyboard check pressed. And that's about it. All right, now we have the line of code that makes us stop jumping when we are releasing the A button. Next, we want to change state when we are hitting the ground. So if, and we're going to use the VSP variable for this. So if VSP is equal to 0, and inside this check here, we're going to add another if check. Place meeting this time. So if we are meeting with well, x ourselves, y plus 1, so 1 pixel beneath us, with the object wall, then the state is going to change to last state. Yep, that's good. And if you remember, the last state variable changes depending on what the last state we were in was. All right. And we also want to check for something just a bit different. So if our VSP is not equal to 0 and we are still place meeting somewhere, for example, imagine we're jumping, and then while we are jumping, VSP is not equal to 0, we land on top of a brick or a block. Now, since VSP is not equal to 0, this here will not be triggered and the state will not change, and we're effectively going to stay into the jumping state and, well, break the game. We don't want that. So let's just add another check. So else. So yeah. Else, let's say if place meeting. And it's basically the same line, except instead of checking for 1 pixel under Y, we're going to check for the VSP number of pixels under Y. With the object wall, then we are going to change the state. So state is equal to last state. And that is it for the jumping. All right. After that, we're going to go ahead and change a bit of stuff into the collisions. So let's go ahead into our collision and moving script. Come on, go ahead. Thank you. Okay, now if you remembered, we were checking for the number of argument counts, and then depending on the number of arguments or the number of objects we are feeding into this script, we check for collisions either in the x-axis or y-axis. Now this works, but since we'll be adding in quite a lot of objects, there seems to be a slight problem with the code that, well, breaks the game. So we're gonna do a simple fix for now and maybe change it later on. But yeah, we'll just do it this way for now. So remove the for loop. We're not gonna need it anymore. Let's go ahead and untab this. You can press Shift Tab to untab stuff you have tabbed in. And since the argument I doesn't exist, we're simply gonna say, okay, well, argument 0. So go ahead and change all this. And that should be pretty good. Okay. And how we're going to check instead for all of the collision objects is we're simply going to add a new object. We're going to call it PRA for parent solid. And this is going to be our solid parent objects. So whenever we want to check for a collision with something that is solid, instead of checking the solid box, because we're not using the GameMaker physics, we're going to check for this parent here. And all its children are going to have the same properties of this solid object. So we can do the same. We can start right now with the object wall. Go ahead and into parent, select object 4, which is parent solid. Come on, update the name. Let's just make sure this works, and there it is. Okay, so if we go back into the object player step event, we got to be careful because we have references to the object wall we currently just wrote. So you want to go here and change these to parent solid. And why am I doing this is that, well, the blocks we're going to add in not so long from now, well, instead of placing a wall object on top of each one of them to check for collisions, we're simply going to check for the collisions with the blocks themselves. And since they're going to be parented with the solid object, we're only going to need to check for the solid object instead. So let's change this here, parent solid, okay. And our collision and moving script, instead of object wall, we want parent solid. All right. Now that all the changes are done to my code, let's go ahead and add in some new blocks. Well, first things first, we're gonna have to add in some new sprites. So let's go ahead and create a new group, and let's call it blocks. Pretty original, I know. And we'll also create another group, and this one is going to be called power-ups. Great. I'll be creating some power-ups object, but not making them actually give you a power-up. This is going to be for another video. So into the blocks, we're going to create a sprite, and we're going to load the brick. We're going to start with the brick. Yeah. So let's call it SPR_brick, and it's the overworld brick, since there's a lot of different sprites for all the different blocks, bricks, enemies, depending on which world you are in. We're gonna have to keep track of all this. So SPR brick overworld seems pretty fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and create another sprite. This one is going to be called SPR_block hit overworld, and we're going to load the block hit sprite. Now all these sprites are going to be in the video's description. Don't worry about that. You can go ahead and follow along if you want. Next, SPR_block and also overworld. Load sprite. We want the block, and since it's a strip, we're actually going to go into the edit sprite and add from strip. Come on, we don't want the power-ups sprites, so let's go into the blocks and this one here. Let's open this. We have 3 images per row. The images are 16 pixels by 16, and that's it. We also want to add in another yellow one, because when it's animating, we want to see the yellow just a bit more than all the other sprites. So this is good. All right, let me see if there's another sprite we need to add into the blocks. Well, we're going to use the debris later on when we're going to program the Super Mario, you know, when he grows taller. So not for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the power-ups. So we want the mushroom. Yeah, let's call it SPR_mushroom. Seems good. Overworld. I forgot how to write there. All right, and this sprite is going to go into the power-ups folder. Let's go ahead and create another one. SPR_1up this time. Again, overworld, because we're starting with the overworld. 1up. Okay. We want the sprite coin, so coin overworld. This one is a strip, so add from strip. So my sprites, power-ups, there it is. Let's open it. This time around there's 4 sprites, and it's also 16 by 16. Good. And lastly, SPR, which one is it? Let's load the sprite, and oh, the star. Okay, so SPR star overworld. Need its sprite. Again, it's a strip, so we have to add from strip. And that's it for the sprites. Next, we're going to create the brick object. So let's go ahead and create a new group. This is going to be called bricks. So we'll be having bricks, we'll be having blocks, and we're also going to be having power-ups. You can add all these groups here. Yeah, I guess I could create a group for the brick sprite also. Yeah, let's do this. Like so. and add in the brick inside here. Yeah, that's good. So let's add in a new object, and we're gonna call this one obj_brick. We're going to assign the brick sprite to it, just like that. And into the, oh, don't forget, we want a parent. We want the parent solid. Really important. Okay, so we want a create event. So let's add in here, drag in some code. And let's just say setup. And we want to add two variables. So bouncing is equal to false. And initial y is going to be equal to y. And we're going to use these two variables. Actually, initial takes only one n. Okay. Let's add in a step event. Drag in some code. And here it gets a bit more complicated. So let's say main actions, okay? We want first to check for collisions. So and we want to check for collision with the player. So if place meeting we want the x, we want y plus 1 because it's underneath. We want to check if we are hitting from the bottom of the sprite with the object player. Then bouncing is going to be equal to true. And if bouncing is true, we're going to handle the bouncing animation. So if bouncing, we want the y to be minus equal 1 every step, so it goes up. And if y is equal to initial y minus 8, so we want it to go 8 pixels from its original position, bouncing is going to be equal to false. All right. After that, if we are not bouncing, let's go ahead and add in some code here. And if y is not equal to initial y, meaning that if we're not at the initial position we were in when we started, then y is going to be plus equal 1. And once it reaches the initial y, well, it's going to stop. And that's it for the object brick. Let's go test this out right now if it works. And if it does, we can go ahead and add all the other blocks. So let me just position Mario here. Okay, I'm going to open the grid, go into my objects. I want the object brick, say 1, 2, 4. Yeah, 4 blocks above. That's good. So let's test this. Let's go beneath it, jump, and there we go. See, once we hit it, it jumps, and then it goes back down. And since we use the parent solid object, we can also go on top of it. Great. Now, moving on. Since we have the code laid out for the object brick, we can simply use this one and duplicate it for all the other blocks or bricks we want to add into our game. So let's do just that. Let's duplicate the object brick. And this time, let's say object brick, but this one is going to have a mushroom in it. So it all stays the same, but into the step event. Here into the main actions, we want to check for its sprite index and its original y. So if, and I'll explain it afterwards, so if sprite index is equal to SPR underscore block underscore hit. Yep, hit overworld. And y is equal to initial y. Then we exit. And in here, as soon as we hit the player, we want to change the sprite index to be equal to SPR underscore block hit overworld. And we want to instance create. At its x position, say y minus 16, y minus 16, obj underscore mushroom. Now, the object mushroom isn't created yet. We're going to create it soon enough, don't worry. And that's about it for the brick mushroom. So once we hit it, same as before, bouncing is equal to true and we bounce, but now we change the sprite to be sprite block hit, and we create the mushroom object, which is going to give us the Super Mario power-up. Now, if the sprite index is equal to the block hit sprite, and we are back to our y initial position, we exit this whole code, and we effectively stop the player to be able to create another mushroom or make the block bounce again. And that is it for this. Let's just go ahead into power-ups and create the mushroom object. So obj underscore mushroom. And let's add its mushroom sprite and add an event. Let's say we're gonna add some code later inside this one, but for now let's just go ahead and check for a collision with the object player. And once we do collide, we're going to destroy the instance. Instance destroyed. There we go. Okay, so that's it for the object brick mushroom. Let's go ahead and add in the other brick we need, which is the brick star. So same thing, let's go ahead and duplicate the object brick mushroom since it already has the code we want, and call it obj underscore brick star. As simple as that. Into the step event, instead of creating the object mushroom, we want to create the object star. Like so. Let's go ahead and create the object into power-ups. Oh, you know what? We can actually duplicate the mushroom object. Yep, I know. So duplicate, and we're going to call it obj underscore star, and assign its star sprite. Like so. In this one, we want to add a create event. Drag in some code. And we simply want to set the image speed to be equal to 0.2. All right, so that's it for the brick star. And one last brick we need to add in is the invisible one. So let's go ahead and duplicate object brick mushroom. Instead of SPR brick, we're gonna go ahead and give it the SPR wall debug so we can see it and make it non-visible. Okay, so into the step event, once we hit it, we want to create the object one up, and we also want to set visible to true. So now we can see the well, actually now it's visible. It's pretty simple. So let's go ahead and add in the one up object. We can duplicate the mushroom for this, obj underscore one up, and change its sprite to be equal to the one up sprite. All right, so that's it for the bricks. Next up, we're gonna add in some blocks, and not quite next, since well, object 14 here is actually I forgot to write the name. Sorry about that, guys. You might have noticed this before I did. Invisible one up, it's going to be called, since it's an invisible block and it gives us a one up. Okay, and no, I said these were enough for the bricks, but there's actually one more brick I'd like to create. So let's go ahead and duplicate the object brick mushroom, and we're gonna call this one obj underscore brick underscore infinite coin. All right, so in the create event, we're gonna add a variable that's going to be called coins, and it's going to be equal to 10. So these are the number of coins we're going, the block is going to be starting with, and it changes depending on the state the player is currently in. So if we are Mini Mario or Super Mario, if we're Mini Mario, it gives us 10 coins, and if it's Super Mario, it gives us 15. But we're gonna change this later on when we tackle the power-ups. All right, so into the step event we go. Right here. Bouncing is going to work. Instance create. We're gonna go ahead and create object infinite coin that we have to create afterwards. Here, the sprite index. We want to change this if the coins are equal to 0. So if coins are equal to 0, then we change the sprite index. And we also want to decrease gradually the number of coins we have. So just before the create here, we're going to say if y is equal to initial y, then coins are going to decrease by 1 each time. And I check if the block is at its initial position, just to make sure that we don't decrease the number of coins by more than 1 each time we hit it. So that's about it for this block here. Let me just make sure if everything is fine. All right. Let's go ahead and create the coin power up. Nope, not a group. Obj underscore infinite coin. All right, let's give it the coin overall sprite. Add in a create event. Now this is going to be a placeholder until we actually create the real object infinite coin. So the code in here is going to change in the future videos. So we're going to set the image speed to be equal to 0.5 for now. That's pretty good. V speed is going to be equal to -5, just so that the coin goes straight up as soon as it's created. We want to set the alarm 0 to be 15 steps. All right, now let's create the alarm 0. Drag in some code. We want to set the V speed to be equal to 0. So after 15 steps of going up, the coin stops moving. We set another alarm, this time alarm 1, to be equal to 15 again. Okay, so it's going to say at this position for 15 more steps. And let's go ahead and add in the alarm 1. Here we're simply going to call instance destroy. So that's going to create a coin, make it go up, make it stay up a bit of time, and then eventually destroy it. Later on, we're going to add its point values to the number of points the player has in total, but it's going to be for next episode. All right, guys, we are almost done here. There are only 2 new blocks we need to create, so let's go ahead and do that. I don't know why I keep creating new objects. Actually, I want to duplicate this one here. So again, duplicate the object brick mushroom. And finally, we're going to the blocks. So first one is going to simply be called object block. You know what? Let's call it coin. So we know that this one is going to spawn a simple coin. Change its sprite to be equal to SPR block overworld. And in the create, we want to set its image speed to be equal to 0.1. All right, now into the step event. There's not much things different we're going to do, except that we are going to create object infinite coin when we hit the block. So that's good for this one. And let's go ahead and drag this into our blocks folders. Great. And let's go ahead and create the last block we need. So duplicate this one. And instead of object infinite coins, it's going to give us the mushroom object. And later on, we're going to change this block here so that when we are Super Mario, instead of giving us a mushroom, it gives us a flower. But that's going to be for the power-ups episode. So just before we finish with this one, its name is going to be object block mushroom. Great. So now that we have a bunch of blocks and bricks, let's put them into our room to test if they all work pretty fine. So bricks, we want, say, let me open the grid here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say 2 bricks just to make sure they work. We want a brick mushroom here. We want a brick infinite coin here. We want after that a brick star. We want the brick invisible one up. After that we want a block coin here, and we want the blocks mushroom right here. Let me just add another brick in between here because there's a slight problem with this and I want to show it to you guys before I go ahead and fix this. So let's try this. Now if everything goes well, it should work pretty fine. So we go here, there's our bricks here. All right, after that we have the mushroom block. As you can see, it changes its sprite and we can no longer hit it. We also have the infinite coin, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and at the 10th time it changes. Here we have the star. Great. And after that we have the invisible block. See that nice animation on these blocks here? Awesome. So there's a coin right there. And finally a mushroom. Great. Now let me reload the game here. As you might have noticed, when I hit 2 blocks at the same time, both of them go up. Now that is because when I check for collision with the player inside of these blocks, or bricks actually, I check for a collision right beneath of them, regardless of the grid. So if the player is standing right in the middle of the grid, it's still going to collide with both of these bricks and make them both go up. Now we don't want that, and we're gonna fix this right now. Go ahead into the sprites under the debug folder. We're gonna create a sprite. We're gonna call it SPR follower. Okay, let's edit the sprite. We want a new one. We're gonna set it to be 16 by 16, and let's simply put it green with opacity of a 120 or so, just so we can see through it. Okay, so let's go ahead into our debug objects, and we want to create a new object. This one is going to be called object follower, and it's going to have the follower sprite. Okay, in here, all right, we want to add in a step event, and we want to align it to the grid. So into the move tab here, just drag in the align to the grid and set the grid size. It's going to be 16 by 16. Okay, but before we align it to the grid, we want it to follow our player. So let's drag in some code. Let's say follow player. So x is going to be equal obj underscore player.x, and y is going to be equal to obj underscore player.y. By doing so and placing this code just on top of the align to grid, it's going to, well, actually, this object is going to be following the object player every step of the game. And after that, it's going to align it to a 16 by 16 grid. All right. I hope you're following on right now. Now, if we go into our blocks, now there's quite a them to change, but we can do this into the step event. See here where we're checking for place meeting with the object player. We're going to add another place meeting. So place meeting, and we can actually copy this here because it's the same code. And instead of object player, we want object follower. If place meeting X, oh, these here. It's supposed to be ends, like so. All right, so copy this. Now all that does is that it checks for, of course, the player and the object follower. So I hope you're following along right now. The bricks or blocks are only going to do their stuff if they're colliding with both of them. And since the follower is aligned to the grid, well, only the blocks or brick that is right on top of the follower are going to be triggered. I'm going to show this visually just in a moment. Okay, let me just go ahead and change all the step events of all the bricks and blocks we created. So again, if place meeting object player, go ahead and copy the code. If place meeting here, okay. Don't forget to do this with all of these. Right here. Okay, okay. With the one up also. We also want to do it with both our block objects, not only the bricks. So right here. And finally, right here. All right. So now that this is done, let's go ahead and check our game now. As you can see, well, I forgot to, well, that's great. Into the player object, into the create event, let's go ahead and create the follower object. I forgot to put it into the game room. So instance underscore create x y obj underscore follower. And let's go ahead and do this right now. Oh, well, that's good, but it's not exactly what I was hoping for. Let's go back here into our object follower and into its step event follow player. We have to add -16 and -16. Since the origin of this sprite here is not the same as the origin of the of Mario's sprite, or actually it's going to be -8 since it's half the height. Okay, now it's going to work. There you go. So as you can see, as I move along and change position on the grid, the follower is going to align itself with the grid. So if I go ahead and jump, see, I'm currently hitting the wall, the brick here, but it's not triggering because the brick, the follower isn't underneath it. But if the follower is underneath, then it triggers. See? Let me just reload the game here so you can see it better with the 3 bricks at the beginning. All right. See, I'm standing straight in the middle, but now there's only 1 brick that is getting hit. Awesome. All right. So the last thing we need to do before I end this video is actually put all these bricks in the room at their rightful place. You can use the image I provided in the last episode to do that. It's going to be in the video's description also. And don't forget, into the object follower, you want to uncheck the visible tab right here so that when you're actually playing the game, you're not seeing it follow you around. So let me put all these blocks and I'll see you then. And there you go, guys. Now you have a game that somewhat resembles the original Super Mario Brothers. Of course, there's no enemies and, well, there's no power-ups. But don't worry, these will come, these will come. Before I go ahead and tackle the enemies, there's a few things I'd like to do, like the Super Mario state, probably add in some power-ups. There's a button that's supposed to make you go faster. I also want to fix that. And there's also slight adjustments here and there that I need to do into the code. But yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. So yeah, don't forget to leave a comment below if you have any troubles or you want me to address something in particular. Also, don't forget to leave a like below and subscribe if you want more. You can also go ahead and support me on Patreon. It's always appreciated. And it also gives me the strength to continue these videos. So yeah, until next time, thanks for watching.